Hello. In this lecture, I'm going to talk about how to tackle the background research necessary for your textual analysis. And I'm going to summarize my own research on the Grapes of Wrath to show you how the research serves to help us validate our ideas about what lies beneath the surface of the story. When you dive into research or film, you'll find that there's general information you need to know. This information does not need a citation because it is generally known. There are other things that aren't generally known. This information should be cited. Okay, for both general information and information that requires a citation, here are 10 things you need to research. The movie in general. You need to do this so you can add it to your bibliography at the end of the paper. Even though this is general information, you will be making reference to that film throughout your analysis. Therefore, it needs a citation. The name of the studio. This is general information, does not need to be cited. The name of the director. This is also general information, does not require a citation. Knowing what other significant work this director is known for and stylistic elements, this information should be cited. The name of the screenwriter. This is general information and does not need citation. But what other significant work and background the screenwriter is known for, this information should be cited. If the film was adapted from another source, who wrote that source material, this is general information, does not require a citation. However, if you have source material from another author, what other significant work is this person known for, or what controversies were they involved in? This information should be cited. Why is this film important in cinematic history? This information should be cited. Can you place this film in context with what was happening at the time in the history of that culture? This information should be cited. A good place to start for your general information is the Internet Movie Database, or the IMDb. A good place to start on your biographies is Wikipedia, but you cannot cite that source, Wikipedia. You'll have to start hunting around for a proper source, like a known journalist or an encyclopedia or a documentary film from a professional company, not somebody that just throws something up on Wikipedia. But like I said, Wikipedia is a good starting point. After you've done that, you should have a better idea on going a little deeper with your research regarding the cultural contexts. This can look at the influence of technology, history, societal movements, politics, the economy, or geography, as those things may have had an influence on the art. After going through some study of the Grapes of Wrath and John Ford, I decided I wanted to study a little more about American history and American politics to see if there are any connections I could make back to the bigger messages in the film. As you find good sources, just keep track of them by saving their internet links. You'll go into ezbib.com eventually and turn that into your works cited page at the end of the paper. Your research should look something like this. Here's what I found interesting about my own research that I think has some bearing on my analysis of the film. The film Grapes of Wrath was made in a very specific moment in American history, as it turns out, the end of the Great Depression. In researching more about this period of decline in American life, I found that farmers, in a system called sharecropping, where farmers worked and lived on someone else's land, this is a system where a landowner provides housing as well as a share of the profits from what is raised on a farm in exchange for the farm family's labor. Well, this system broke down in the Great Depression, driving thousands of farming families that didn't own the land technically out of those arrangements. Additionally, the American government had no system in place to ease the suffering of these people as they suddenly found themselves without any source of income or home. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt had been driving legislation since 1933 to combat the Great Depression, but it wasn't enough for many people. This drove many families westward out of desperation on the hope that the farmland in California had remained bountiful enough during this time when the land had dried up in the middle of the country, in a time that's also known as the Great Dust Bowl. Clearly, these current events had an impact on author John Steinbeck and film director John Ford. Steinbeck and Nunnally Johnson, the person who took Steinbeck's novel and turned it into a screenplay, it's interesting that they were both journalists before they came to Hollywood. In fact, Steinbeck covered the plight of the migrant farm workers in Oklahoma as they made their way westward to California. John Ford, on the other hand, was a director most known for westerns like Rio Bravo. John Ford began making films, primarily westerns, in 1917, pretty much at the birth of cinema. I mean, to put this in perspective, John Ford made a film called My Darling Clementine, which told the story of Wyatt Earp and the gunfight at the OK Corral. Ford was actually friends with Wyatt Earp, and Earp even went as far as blocking out to Ford how Earp planned his attack. John Ford's view of Western life was romantic and hopeful. This came through the research. His heroes were pure of heart and connected to the land. I couldn't find this piece in my research, but I wonder if Ford ever considered his role his films may have played in giving the migrants hope that the journey west towards the promise of new life was something worth doing. Steinbeck's novel came out in 1939. It won awards, but it was burned in public displays, largely because Steinbeck's novel made the government a villain, the banking system a villain, and the California farming industry a villain. Incredibly, Ford's film came out in 1940. Think of the speed at which everything must have been done. So close in time was the film to the actual events in history. Ford was able to film some of the scenes in some of the actual migrant camps where the farmers were forced to live in. Ford's film also won awards. It was not criticized as much as the novel was, and I'm guessing that's because Ford changed the ending to a positive power of the people moment. The novel's ending involves a stillborn baby and the breastfeeding of an old man who's starving to death. Different tones there. I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about what I uncovered in the research in The Grapes of Wrath. This research will definitely make its way into my paper. I hope you heard in my example how your research needs to include background information on the film, the director, the screenplay writer, the source material if there is any, as well as any research on how the film connects to a couple of your cultural contexts, like politics and history. Thanks for watching.